Rivalries. What would sports be without them? There's nothing quite like when the Yankees play the Red Sox, or Ohio State versus Michigan. In the 2000s, the NFL had Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady, one of the most heated rivalries in sports, featuring the two best quarterbacks in the league facing off against one another, usually with playoff positioning on the line, if not a playoff meeting in and of itself, as both quarterbacks played in the same conference of the NFL. While that rivalry did remain the best of the NFL for nearly 20 years, there was a glimmering moment from 2012 to 2014 when it looked like a new rivalry was going to take its place. This time, not only would the rivalry be in the same conference, but the same division out west. Russell Wilson and Colin Kaepernick took the league by storm, serving as the most compelling rivalry in the league, leading two franchises chasing greatness with similar philosophies as the read option found its way into the NFL. Let's explore the Russell Wilson versus Colin Kaepernick rivalry a little deeper. When did it begin? Who got the last word? What caused it to flame out? The Seahawks and the 49ers have been division rivals since Seattle moved from the AFC West to the NFC West in 2002. And while the teams faced each other twice a year, there wasn't much of a rivalry between the two clubs in Seattle's early days in the NFC West, as the Seahawks consistently had the better roster from 2003 to 2010. In fact, the 49ers didn't have a single playoff appearance over that time period. Meanwhile, the Seahawks found themselves in the postseason 6 times, winning the NFC West 4 times consecutively, and even making a Super Bowl appearance. Everything changed in 2010. 1 year after longtime Seahawks head coach Mike Holmgren retired, the organization turned to the collegiate football ranks, hiring the 9-year, 2-time national champion USC head coach Pete Carroll. 1 year later, the 49ers hired former Stanford head coach Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh and Carroll's teams faced each other in college regularly, as the USC versus Stanford rivalry was at its peak in the 2000s. Harbaugh and Carroll infamously clashed following a 2009 matchup when Stanford capped off a 55-21 win over USC with a late 2-point conversion attempt and then another touchdown. Carroll met Harbaugh for the obligatory midfield handshake and asked Harbaugh, and in 2011, both head coaches found themselves leading NFL franchises in the same division. While both coaches quickly found success, Harbaugh's 49ers were a more promising contender early on. In Carroll's first year with the Seahawks in 2010, the team managed to win the NFC West and defeat the defending Super Bowl champion New Orleans Saints with the famous Beastquake. But the Seahawks were only 7-9 in the regular season that year, a year that would mark the last season of Matt Hasselbeck serving as the Seahawks quarterback after being the team starter for 10 years. In Harbaugh's first year with the 49ers in 2011, the team went 13-3 and made it all the way to the NFC Championship game, losing to the Giants in a back-and-forth effort. Little did NFL fandom know that something was brewing behind the scenes on that San Francisco team in the form of a rookie backup quarterback by the name of Colin Kaepernick. And in the following offseason, something was brewing in Seattle as well, when the Seahawks drafted Russell Wilson in the 3rd round with plans of having him serve as their backup quarterback. The 2012 season would serve as a massive turning point for both franchises. And that is the year when the rivalry between Kaepernick and Wilson truly began. In a year that the 49ers would eventually reach the Super Bowl, Alex Smith served as the Week 1 starter. Smith led the team to a 6-2 record before suffering a concussion in Week 10 matchup against the Rams. Colin Kaepernick entered the game in relief of Alex Smith. Kaepernick then started Week 11 in a 32-7 victory over the Chicago Bears as Smith remained in concussion protocol. From then on, however, the 49ers were no longer Alex Smith's team. Harbaugh made the controversial decision to stick with the hot hand in Colin Kaepernick, a quarterback that nobody could have predicted would win the starting job in San Francisco. Meanwhile, in Seattle, a similar story. prior to the 2012 season, the Seahawks signed former Green Bay Packers backup quarterback Matt Flynn. Flynn was coming off of a Week 17 performance where he broke the Packers' single-game record for most passing yards in a game. That was enough for the Seahawks to think they'd found their franchise quarterback. They were right about finding the franchise quarterback that offseason. They were wrong about which one, however. Russell Wilson wound up beating Matt Flynn for the starting job in preseason. Fast forward to Week 16, Russell Wilson and the Seahawks put the 49ers on notice that they weren't going to be an easy divisional foe. They routed the 49ers 13-42. This was the first time that Colin Kaepernick and Russell Wilson played in a head-to-head matchup. The Seahawks and 49ers would both make the playoffs in 2012. The 49ers won the division and earned a first-round bye as the number 2 seed in the NFC playoffs, while the Seahawks entered the postseason as a wild card, first playing the Washington Redskins, erasing a 14-point deficit and winning 24-14. The Seahawks would go on to lose a nail-biter against the Falcons a week later. 49ers, meanwhile, reached the Super Bowl battling in a Jim Harbaugh versus John Harbaugh affair, as the first time that brother head coaches played each other in the Super Bowl. Ultimately, the Ravens won the game. But in the NFC West, the rivalry was on. Russell Wilson and Colin Kaepernick were now full-fledged starters in their respective organizations. Two quarterbacks who were unlikely to be starters in the NFL had each forged their own path to the job. The entire league knew the new quarterback rivalry of the NFL had arrived, even including a Madden commercial before their 2013 Week 2 matchup.
Big game on Sunday.
You know what we should do? Whoever loses has to shave an eyebrow.
All right. Hope you don't like your eyebrow.
Rated everyone.
The Seahawks wound up winning the game, dominating the 49ers 29-3 in Seattle. And to his credit, Colin Kaepernick lived up to his end of the seeming television joke, shaving an eyebrow following the loss. The two teams met up again in Week 14, where the 49ers squeaked out a narrow victory over the Seahawks, 17-19. That was one of only 3 Seattle losses that season. As many NFL fans remember, however, that wasn't the last time the two teams played each other that year. In the NFC Championship, the 49ers and the Seahawks met up in Seattle again. For the 49ers, this was their 3rd NFC Championship in a row. For the Seahawks, this was the franchise's first return to the 3rd round of the NFL playoffs since that Mike Holmgren team back in 2005. The game lived up to the hype, with the 49ers taking a 10-point lead, the Seahawks catching up, the 49ers retaking the lead, the Seahawks then taking the lead, and then the tip. The Seahawks went on to win the Super Bowl over the Denver Broncos. In 2014, the 49ers started off the season strong with a record of 4-2, but wound up losing 6 of their last 10, including twice to Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. The 49ers missed the playoffs that season. The Seahawks found their way back to the Super Bowl, losing to the Patriots. That offseason, contract extension talks between the 49ers front office and Jim Harbaugh broke down. Harbaugh left the NFL for the head coaching position at Michigan. In 2015, the 49ers' struggles continued in their lone season under head coach Jim Tomsula. Colin Kaepernick struggled to play consistent football, losing to the Seahawks and eventually being benched for Blaine Gabbert. In 2016, Chip Kelly took over as the 49ers head coach, eventually playing Colin Kaepernick in Week 6, replacing Blaine Gabbert. The 49ers' 2016 season ended in a Week 17 loss to the Seattle Seahawks, which was also Colin Kaepernick's last game for the 49ers and the league. That offseason, Kaepernick opted out of his contract with the 49ers and decided to pursue free agency. To date, Kaepernick still hasn't been offered a contract by any NFL teams. Many NFL sports personalities believed Kaepernick wasn't signed because he was too controversial, choosing to sit during the national anthem in his first preseason game as a backup in 2016. Kaepernick has stated that he chose to sit to bring attention to police brutality towards persons of color in America. Kaepernick eventually began kneeling during the national anthem instead of sitting, an action that many NFL players took part in. The decision to kneel or stand during the national anthem became so widespread and controversial across the NFL that television networks eventually stopped showing the national anthem altogether. So while many believe that Kaepernick wasn't signed to an NFL team due to the kneeling controversy, others point to Kaepernick's poor play and reportedly high price tag. In 2022, Colin Kaepernick worked out with the Raiders. Warren Sapp claimed that he had sources tell him the workout was a disaster. Meanwhile, Russell Wilson stayed with the Seahawks until 2022 when he was traded to the Denver Broncos. and then cut less than 2 years later. Wilson's now preparing to enter the 2024 season as the Pittsburgh Steelers' new starting quarterback. Pete Carroll and the Seahawks parted ways following the 2023 season. Carroll leaves Seattle as the winningest head coach in Seahawks franchise history. What was once set to be the biggest quarterback rivalry in football went out with less than a whimper. Since Kaepernick left the 49ers, they've been back to the Super Bowl twice, losing both times to the Kansas City Chiefs. Nor Russell Wilson or the Seahawks have found their way back to the big game since that 2014 loss to the Patriots. The short-lived Wilson-Kaepernick rivalry ended with Wilson winning the battle 7-2, including their NFC Championship clash for the ages. For a brief moment, the NFL thought they'd have a new rivalry for years to come. Now, it's just a distant memory.